Hey, how's it going everyone? Carlo and Dylan here from All You Can Board, and today we are telling you guys about the games we don't like, but you might. So don't think of this as just our least favorite games or the worst games we've played or anything like that. We would have called the video that if that was the case. These are games specifically that we see the value in them. We see why other people would like them, and in some cases we might even recommend these games to other people, but for whatever reason they don't click with us and our personal preferences when it comes to games. So they're games that I think in a lot of cases we either haven't featured or wouldn't normally feature on the channel, but it gives us an opportunity to talk about why they wouldn't click for us but might for someone else, right?
Yeah, for sure. And so we're going to be talking about 5 games. The first one that we're going to talk about is actually one that we share, a shared game that we kind of share the same opinion on, even if it differs a little bit. We both are putting it on for similar reasons. Mm-hmm. And then we're each going to have 2 of our own games that we're going to bring to this off for 5 total. So I'm just going to say this right now. I'm pretty sure you're going to be really disappointed with both of the games that I brought. And I say that just as
anticipating a little bit of this.
I'll also say right now, it's not like Agricola's not on here. It's that I don't dislike Agricola.
Slight relief.
But I, in general, the games that I brought are new to me games that I just didn't land. And I guess getting into the criteria a little bit, the way I've approached mine is that these are games that I've played very few times. In some cases, just the one time. I think actually maybe both of them I've only played the one time. Aside from our joint game, I've played more than once. Right. But the reason I'm putting them on here is because as we cover more games and as we play more games and our collections are so big, we don't have a ton of time as we're getting further into adulthood to play games, and I'm not often going to suggest to play a game that I actively don't like or currently don't like. It would be more likely that I go to someone's house and they're playing, and I'm like, yeah, you know what, I'd like to give that game another shot. But even then, it's going to be not my first choice.
Yeah, you're going along with what other people want to play.
Exactly.
That case, yeah.
So the reason I'm putting them on here is that I understand both of them fit the criteria of games that I am certain that other people will like, because I'm pretty sure you like both of them, and I know lots of other people will as well. But at the same time, it's possible that I could at some point end up liking them. Maybe if there's something about these first plays that just didn't land. And so I'm open to not just saying that other people will like them, but also that over time, if I do play it again and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, you know what? I feel differently. I'd be willing to explore, but it's not my top priority when I have so many other games I want to explore, including ones I'm certain I enjoy, right?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I didn't come over today trying to hurt your feelings. So I don't think I'm just kidding. I don't think I have any games that are going to offend you in any way. Actually, one of them I don't even know if you've played, but
you grabbed one off my shelf, so how do you?
It's not something that you yourself own. It's something we co-own together.
Got it.
Anyways, yeah. And the last thing I want to say, because this is a really small subset of games that I think you and I both like. It was hard to even pick 3. I think my whole shortlist had 5 or 6 games. There's not many games that fall into this category of these are the games that I think would have, if you look at Shelf Side, the YouTube channel, which we really like, they do something where they talk about their personal score and their recommender score, which is sort of like a subjective versus objective. Mm-hmm. And these are games where I think of my personal enjoyment score would probably be anywhere from 4 or 5 out of 10 to where my objective score, if I was a teacher evaluating someone on game design, a lot of these games I might give a 7 out of 10 from an objective standpoint. So there's a really wide range in terms of how I feel about the game for myself versus in general kind of thing.
Yeah, and the very last thing I'll say is I don't hate any of the games that I picked. Yes. I dislike the experience I had, but it's not like these would be me rating these games a 1 out of 10, a 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10. They might even be higher than a 5 out of 10 if we're going by just my personal rating score or whatever. Yeah. It's just that, again, as with this many board games, we're just a little bit more critical, and also we are more, appreciative and aware of our time that we're spending playing board games. So we sometimes don't have enough time, and there's so many games we want to get to.
That's exactly. It's just a matter of being more selective. So why don't we start off with our joint game that we already knew as soon as I got here, we knew what the game was, right?
Yeah, let's do it. You introduce it.
Okay, so the first game we're talking about is a 2-player only game called Targi. Mm-hmm. We don't have a physical copy between us. This is one that we've each only played on BGA. I think you've said you played it more than once. I think
twice, but it's been a while now. And I think both those plays are really close together because after the first play, I remember I came in with high expectations because I've heard so many people talking about it. And after the first play not landing, I was like, maybe I just missed it. I played it again and felt the same way. So.
Yeah, and I think I've played similar thing. I think I've played it about twice. So the long and short of it is a game where and again, a lot of these games, because we haven't played them a lot, the rules explanations or overview is not going to be super thorough or clear necessarily, but You are basically playing on this little grid. It's kind of a two-player worker placement game where you're determining, you have these multiple workers that you're setting on the sort of X and Y axis of this grid, and whichever lines kind of intersect, or the lines that the workers are in line with, determine the actions that are going to be available to you that round.
Yeah.
But your opponent can't put their workers in the same rows or columns. So the start of each round starts with you placing these, which is going to kind of determine your lines of, there's going to be a total of maybe like 6 or 7 actions, depending how you line them up, that are going to be available to you that round. And some of these are going to be getting certain goods that only, that you need to trade in for points. You can get tiles that, there's different like set collection, little bonuses that you can get. So the whole game is about acquiring resources and converting them into points while trying to get in your opponent's way and deny them their opportunities, right? It's a very interactive, very mean game. You have to be watching what your opponent's doing and kind of getting in their way almost more than watching your own benefits, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, what were your first impressions, and what did you like about it, or what's the value you see in it versus what you don't like about it?
Yeah, so for all these picks, for all these games, I'm going to kind of like, I'm going to say the specific characteristics that make it something I think is not landing for me. And some of them I might not even fully know exactly what it is, what combination of things makes it not land for me. But I'm also going to say the things that I still do, like the mechanics or the things mechanisms, whatever, that I still do enjoy. So like with Targi, I was most interested in it because of the idea that it's the cross section of where you place your workers on the border, that you're taking actions just without having played it and hearing about that. I thought that's an interesting way to approach placing your workers on this grid of cards. And in theory, I was like, hey, that's pretty cool. And then having to like not just think, what am I going to try to like take as an action, but also what is my opponent going to do? What am I trying to deny them? So in practice, in theory, that was the thing that kind of like attracted me the most to Target, besides the fact of all the buzz and everyone talking about it. For some reason, that in practice wasn't as interesting to me as I would have hoped. Like, I still thought it was a neat mechanic, but the execution of it, for whatever reason, as I played, I just never felt like there's some games where I can ignore other things going on, or I can forgive other things going on because one mechanism is so interesting to come back to. Targi's main, gameplay mechanic there, like, just didn't hook me the way I thought it was. And I will say that the biggest detractor, the biggest reason I struggle with Targi, and this might seem like something that, should be easier to overlook, but it's the same reason I struggle with a game like Battle Line, is I just don't find the game that nice to look at. And I think I'm more critical of it because two-player only games is such a wide spanning genre of board games, and also an important one. It's one that I always want to have like multiple contenders in my playlist, on my shelf, in my board game playlist, as well as some of my favorite games are two-player only, and like new ones are coming all the time. Like now Splendor Duel's up there, and it's like one of my favorite two-player only games. So for Targi to then, for me to set up a table with Seven Wonders Duel or Patchwork or Splendor Duel or even so many we could name, and then Targi, I just even I know we only played it on BGA, but it's also something that as a table presence, it just doesn't have something that's really hooking me as a two-player game.
I don't think our opinion would change much playing it in person.
No,
I can't imagine.
And it's hard too, because I often play two-player games not like we play lots of board games together. It's not like we always play two-player only games. We're playing a wide variety. It seems to be that the people I play two-player only games with the most are people that don't play board games that often, or I'm playing a game for the first time with them. And Target's going to be a hard sell based on the fact that it just kind of looks bland. Yeah. So
even if what are you doing? It's like, oh, you collect stuff and trade it for points.
Yeah.
And then you try to get in your opponent's way. Like there's a lot of games that have that basic premise, right?
Yeah. And also I just found it to be a bit. Not complex or complicated, maybe that is what I mean, but I just found it like from lining that up and having to deny your opponent and picking the actions you want while also managing the rob or whatever it's called, going around the side of the board, and also
I almost forgot about the robber, yeah.
Yeah, and then also taking the cards and making your own grid in front of you with them or whatever. Like there's just like, I found that there was more going on than I felt like it needed, and I didn't feel like enough reward for the investment that I was putting into it. So I think that for me, it's a combination of all those things, but the main one, for better or worse, is just not so much even, I don't even know if it's the theme, it's more just the look of the game. Like the artwork and the colors are just not something that is inviting to me, and I felt for whatever reason I held it back.
I've asked you this before about other games. Would either a Marvel or Final Fantasy theme make this more appealing to you?
Listen, because it doesn't have to be Final Fantasy, it doesn't have to be Marvel. It could just be fantasy themed.
Okay, Animal Crossing, whatever. No, I'm just kidding.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, like with a it's like Sobek 2-player, like that. It doesn't have to be that theme, but that has a lot of color, it has a lot of character, it has a lot of personality. Yeah. I feel like that is something that would give it a better shot of landing with me. Yeah. I don't know if it would completely change my overall opinion with it, but it would definitely have a better shot.
For sure. So. No, and honestly, that's a great example. That's a great comparison. Sobek. Yep. Honestly, I have a lot of the similar reasons as you. What I'm going to highlight, though, and I guess it's funny because this actually only popped into my head as we were sitting here filming the comparison, but I'm going to compare it a little bit to Furnace in that it almost has two halves of the game, and I like one half a lot more than the other. The idea of the selection where you're going to place your two, I like that aspect because it feels like there's a lot more to consider, and you're thinking, I can't remember now if you place one and they place one and you take turns.
I think I think
you do, right? So you still don't know if I put one here, what are they going to do, and is that going to then change my second choice? And even just you don't know how the round is going to play out yet. But once those have been established, like the tiles that you take into your possession that are going to determine your scoring conditions are all open information. It's all public. So if I have like 2 tiles that are going to get me points at the end for getting a bunch of dates or a set of date, pepper, and whatever the other thing is, you can just see what I have and you know exactly what you need to deny me. So I find that once we've done the actual thing where we set our workers, the rest of the round is less interesting and feels sometimes a little bit procedural because it's like, well, obviously they want that and then they need that, so they're going to go there, and then after they go there, then maybe I'll go there. And sometimes it plays out the way you'd expect from the beginning of the round. So it just, there's not that unpredictability and that tension in the same way that I like from a lot of 2-player games. I don't want to discount completely. There are some of the tiles on the board or spaces that you go to that give you interesting options to like go somewhere where your opponent is or manipulate the board in some way. So again, it could be a game that maybe if we played it more, or maybe if like you and I played it or played with the same person over and over, might enjoy it more. But I'm not at the point where I'm like interested enough in playing it again. So I'm open to playing it again. I see why a lot of people would like it. And I think for people who like games that are very thinky, where it's all about basically getting in your opponent's way, and there's a bit of that math in terms of like, well, I can score this many points for myself, or I can deny my opponent 6 points by blocking them from getting this. And if you're going to play it with the same person a lot, then I could see that being, a really good experience. But so far, I kind of just bounced off of it.
Yeah, if you're someone who, especially if you're going to play with the same person very often, whether it's because it's a roommate or someone you game with very often, and also you don't, theme or the look of it isn't something that's super important. It's more just about like a really solid, mean. Not even. I don't want to use the word mean, but like
kind of though.
Yeah, like denying your opponent, having to think like. Not just like I'm playing a board game, but I'm also stopping my opponent from effectively playing a board game.
Yeah, you're playing the player more than the game in Target.
So I feel like if those are the type of games you gravitate towards, and you are looking for 2-player only games, like I know there are tons of people who like Target, and there are also tons of people who haven't played it yet that will love it. So I think that's why it's a great one for this list, because even though we don't like it, I'm certain that you might like it, or you already do, and you're cursing us on the other side of the screens.
I was gonna say it's an odd one because we both thought we were gonna like this game a lot because people have been recommending it for years. Tons of comments last time we did a 2-player video. What about Targi? What about Targi? But anyway, I think we said enough about Targi.
All right, so I'm doing my first one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Disappointment number 1.
Break my heart.
Okay, I was
got the knife right in there. Knife right in there.
Yeah, get it ready. I was gonna try to do them in the order of like I'll disappoint you here, and then I'll disappoint you more there. So I don't even know which one's gonna disappoint you the most. So I'm just gonna take a guess. So my first one that is on here that I've only played once, and I'm open to playing it again, but after my first play of it, I will say I don't enjoy it, is The Estates.
What?
Yeah, so...
Wow.
Yeah, so...
What? Yeah, so... Wow. Yes.
The Estates...
Mr. I Love Auction Games.
I know, so...
Okay, sorry, I'll let you talk.
Yeah. The dagger is right in there. Okay, so the Estates... there's a few reasons I think it's not landing, and I'll go over them. And because I'm not 100% certain, it's one of the reasons I'd be really interested to play it again, just to be sure that like the reasons I'm listing here are accurate. But yeah, I've discovered I love auction games. I think we both did as we played Modern Art or whatever. Yeah. I think the problem for me with The Estates is that Modern Art set such a high bar for me and has so many different types of auctions, and it's that level of all these different types of auctions and how to manipulate the market that I love in modern art. And I came in with such high expectations for the estates, just knowing that it was an auction game that also had like, you know, a lot of people, or at least I've heard that a lot of people enjoy it. For some reason, there's just multiple things about it that I don't like. So one of them, and this is like small, but I'll just start here, is I don't really enjoy the aspect of the way the money is used in the estates. Like the closed market is okay, but one, the fact that on your turn you can just choose to just slide one under the board, I don't find that, thematically it's cool, the embezzling and everything. I think that it's a cool tie into like the theme of the game, but in practice of actually just like, I have the option to just tuck one away and essentially I'm just like getting a point every turn. I just don't find that super an interesting way to get points. Okay. I get that you're being rewarded.
Don't forget, I have a comment on that after, but I want to set you off.
I get it. It's like, you know, you're being rewarded for having like, you know, played in a way that you have a bunch of money, now you're stuck in some way. I understand it. It just for whatever reason for me, I didn't quite like that mechanic as much. Okay. I also just think that for me personally as a gamer, it's too mean. And I think we both agree it's a mean auction game.
Oh, absolutely.
And I like meanness in certain games. I don't know what it is specifically with this one that it didn't land, but I just found that the idea that I felt like I was doing more denial than I was playing for myself. I like meanness in games, but I'd rather be able to I'd rather have it be like, if I were doing a percentage split, I'd rather it be like 60% of what I'm doing is my, you know, my board, my tableau, my whatever, like is a focus on my play, and then the other 40% max is me denying other players, me being mean or whatever. I think that's probably the ratio that is like the top that I'd want to hit for me personally with games. I just found the estates to be more than that, at least in the game we played. And while there was aspects that were interesting where I felt like, okay, I'm not even playing myself, I'm just trying to like play the other players, it didn't, I would say that it just wasn't as fun to me as I would have wanted to, as a game I'm going to come back to.
Okay.
And then actually, do you want to comment anything before because I feel like I'm just
just go ahead. Okay. Is there something you like about the game or anything else you don't like?
So I think that the idea of the auction, I don't want to say being secondary, but like that's the wrong way to word it. But driving the building of the buildings or whatever. Yeah. Like actually, you know, my favorite thing about the estates, and I'll say this right now, is that grid of cubes, and that's how like determining what's going to be auctioned based on what's exposed on the ends, and being able to say like, okay, now if someone's made this an auction, that exposes another colored cube that now is available for someone else. But I actually thought that was really, really cool. That was the thing that excited me the most when it was set up when you were teaching, to know that that's how you decide what is auctioned. And even just the idea that you can choose what is being auctioned, and that you could do something that's for yourself or do something that's just to try to like, you know, put your opponent in a tough position. I think that is my favorite thing about the estates. But when we get into, again, I think it's probably also because I'm spoiled by modern art, but I found the auction part lackluster. Like, and maybe it's because there's only one, just that one single type of auction, but I found that to be way less interesting. There was tons of times where it would just like, people put something up for auction and I understood why they put it up for auction, or I know why I put it up for auction, but I knew that it was just gonna be like, okay, most people are just gonna pass. I just found that to be less engaging, a little less interesting. For whatever reason, like I'm explaining a whole bunch of different things because I'm not sure which one is not landing with me the most, or why it's causing so much distress.
Or if it was just all these little annoyances that added up throughout the game, and you said, I didn't really like that, and maybe it just...
And the last thing I would say is that if I was ever going to sit down and with 4 or players, for instance, and play an auction game, I would just much rather play modern art. And I think that that's like, to the point of like, I don't think I tire of modern art enough to be like, okay, let's change it up by going to the estates. Because for me, I would just feel like halfway through our game, I just remember thinking, like, I just wish we played modern art because I would be having a way more fun time. So I think modern art in some ways spoiled me a little bit.
Right.
So yeah, that again, this is just me. I know there's a lot of people who like it, but that's just, and I know you, and even I think everyone at the table besides me probably enjoyed that play a lot.
Right.
For some reason, it just didn't land.
Okay, fair enough. I am surprised, to be honest with you. Very surprised.
Yeah.
I got the impression that you didn't. I got the impression right away that you didn't love it anywhere near as much as me, but I thought you at least enjoyed it. I've played it twice now. I've really, really enjoyed it both times.
Yep.
I will 100% agree with you that modern art, the auctions themselves are more interesting. And I think I've probably done the estates a disservice, either on this channel or to maybe to you or people I've spoken to about the game, referring to it as an auction game, when like, yes, there's an auction every round. That's what you do. You start your turn by holding an auction, basically.
Yeah.
But it's more of it's not area majority or area control, but like it's kind of hard to define what that is on the board. But that's the game. It just happens to be driven by auctions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like the auctions are what enable the pieces to get added to the board. So I told like the auctions themselves, because it's the same type and because you can only bid once, it's never going to come back around to you.
Yep.
They're definitely less interesting, and the auctions are almost like a way to throw your weight around based on your position on the board, or it's the what makes the auctions interesting is the piece that you choose and at what time you choose it, because what you choose, the onus, you're kind of like looking over at someone at the table like, I know that guy needs this piece, and I know he's going to pay through the roof. He's going to pay me like $7,000 or $8,000 for it probably. Yeah. Or something like that. So that's important to focus on, is that it's a very different type of auction game than Modern Art. Yeah. And one thing I want to mention real quick, just about the thing with the tucking the money underneath. I think, like, in a way I agree with you that like the decision of, it's just a yes or no, like at the start of your turn, do I stash $1,000? Because you can't stash any more, and it's just a simple thing. I think the reason why it's in the game, I could be wrong, I haven't played the game enough to know for sure, but I think is because if you're auctioning off pieces and you're people are paying you and buying a lot of the pieces, it means you're not putting as much stuff on the board, but you're going to have more money. So by stashing money under the board, because it's this closed economy, if I'm in the lead, let's say I have like $15,000, the next player has $6,000. Every time I start tucking money, the total pool of money between all the players is smaller. So the value, like my advantage gets bigger the more players do that. Whoever has the most money, their advantage increases sort of in reference to how the other players have, right? So now a bid of 3 late in the game is way more costly than a bid of 3 early on. So I think it offsets, like, whoever's winning auctions is not going to have as much money, so the person with the more money that's not affecting the board has to have the control to bully players around to win more auctions. So it's I honestly, I'm not saying that should convince you that it's a good suddenly, but I think it's important just for anyone watching that's I think why it's in the game. Yeah, like, and I think the reason I stressed like the thematics too, like I think in like I understand why it's in the game, and I also understand like why it might even be close to being a necessity to have something like that in the game. I just when I boil it all down, the idea of just like on my turn I just say, give me a point. Give me a point, give me a point, like, which is essentially what it is. You're just like saying, I take a point, I take a point, I take a point. I think that but you're not considering what it does to the economy. I'm definitely oversimplifying, just like to like try to like hone in on the aspect of I don't like. I guess it's just something to do with like, if using our game as an example, it was like something happened in the first few turns of the game, or whatever, that you got a whole bunch of money. And so because that played out in that way, now X amount of turns, if you remember to do it, you just say, I take a point, I take a point, I take a point by sliding money under. I understand, like, it makes sense, but I just didn't find that as like an interesting thing to do. And nor to have to remember to be like, okay, like, I'm going to take a point, or I forgot to take a point last turn. Like, I don't know. It just, something about it I didn't really like. And I start with that because it's my smallest gripe with the game. I would say my biggest one for sure, it just comes down to personal preference on player meanness. Like, I would say I would say that's pretty much the biggest barrier for me, and that's entirely preference, which is why I put it on here, because I think there's a lot of people who enjoy that in board games, and I do too. I think it's just slightly over the ceiling of what I want to allow in my game. And I would say, without thinking about it too much, it's probably the meanest game I've played, and I'm only going to play it with certain groups of people. It's going to be a sort of a situational occasion type game, but so far I love it, and I can't wait to play it more. But
and you're disappointed, but that's okay.
I am disappointed.
I can see it on your face.
just next time I host a game night, if I'm even considering the estates, I'll let you know so you can choose. I'll play it again.
I'm interested. This is
okay. Good.
I think on both of the games I'm going to talk about, I'm interested to play them again because I'm open to my mind being changed. I just don't feel like it's going to. Maybe it'll just
pretty strong negative reaction from the first game. Okay, fair enough. All right. I think I got to cool down from this one a little before I move on to my first pick here. So the one I'm going to talk about is a game that we actually, I think you reviewed it on the channel a while ago, or it was some type of overview video. Okay. This was something we got as a review copy at the time from Capstone.
Ah, yeah, right, of course.
This is Curious Cargo. So I played this with you once or twice. This is a 2-player only game designed by Ryan Courtney, same designer as Pipeline. This came out a year after Pipeline, I believe. We've never played Pipeline. We were interested in it, and then we got offered this game, and we thought, at first we were like, oh, maybe we should try and play Pipeline too. We still haven't got around to it, but so we played this. I played this with you either once or twice. I know you played it a couple more times without me, and it was one of those games where, as you were explaining the rules and we were setting up and starting to play, I remember thinking, like, this sounds really interesting, and I thought I was going to enjoy this game. And the basic idea is you are you each have sort of a factory, right? And it's curious cargo. You are shipping cargo, and you have these basically like trucks that come into your factory, and you've got this like network of pipes. If you haven't played Pipeline, think of the old Windows 98 game Pipe Dream?
Pipe Dream, yeah.
With the little green goo going through the slime, going through all the pipes.
Great
so there's
game.
that kind of thing going on where you're taking tiles, you can stash them on your board to save them in your reserve. You can put them on the board to connect this little network of pipes. There's pipes of different colors. There's a regular mode that has 2 colors, and then there's a hard mode, which we've never even tried, that has a 3rd color of pipes that makes it even more of this like mind-bending puzzle.
Yeah.
But you're basically getting goods that come into your factory, and then they got to go through these network of pipes and then spill out to... it's not directly into the trucks, is it? It goes into something else first, which then...
No, I think it goes... it's been a while since I played it, but I'm pretty sure it goes like I know there's trucks on both sides, one's for each player.
Oh, that's what it is, right? And then you receive them on one end, and then they go to the other side to ship them, right?
Yeah.
So, what I'm going to say before I get into any further into this is, this game, more than almost any game I've played, requires like precision, planning, like accurate order of your operations. It's such a thinky game. The order that you do things is so important. If you have like one of your trucks, like there's all these numbered slots 1 through 10 or something on your board, and you have to there's these requirements with everything has to be perfect. If you end up 1 short, it could mean that your whole turn was a complete waste of time, that everything you did amounted to nothing, because these first 6 steps got you all these things, and then that last step, you miscalculated slightly, so now your truck doesn't get to go, or it doesn't get to deliver the things, which means that all these pipes were a waste. So the pressure at the start of your turn feels like, I have to get everything right, otherwise, why are we even playing this game if I accomplish nothing on my turn? It's going to be so frustrating. But there's very little of this game that's done simultaneously. So I remember every time I was trying to connect my pipes, and I look up, and I see you looking at me, and you weren't rushing me or anything. You're being great about it. But I just feel that okay, I'm holding up the game, but there's no way I'm going to be able to connect these pipes. And I just want to keep things going. But if I end my turn, I know this is a disaster. So I may as well just forfeit the game if I'm going to end my turn. It felt like to play the game and have a chance of winning, I was going to have to grind it down to such a halt and experience such a level of analysis paralysis that isn't conducive to a good game experience for me.
Right.
And so, but I want to highlight quickly the things I liked about this game, because first off, the fact that it's such a tight experience, and how tied you are to what the other player is doing, and the fact that their goods are coming to your factory and you have to have the open spots to receive their goods and have everything lined up with the pipe, it's such an impressive design. If, again, going back to the note I made at the start of the video, if I was a teacher teaching game design class and someone brought me this, I'd be blown away, and that's why I was so interested to try it. But I just don't find myself having fun while playing it when everything is so precise. But I love the scoring conditions, how in order to win, you need to, I think, ship a certain number of goods.
You have to ship. You cannot win unless you've shipped at least 2 goods or something like that. There's a threshold you have to hit, otherwise you can't be considered for victory.
Right, but then after you've met those 2 mandatory thresholds to be eligible for victory, you can also gain these stars, which if you both meet the requirement to be eligible for victory, then it comes down to who has the most stars. But you could both fail and nobody could win, which I don't know if I've played another 2-player game that has a you both lose type of scenario, because it makes it so that you can't just block the other player. You have to balance doing a good job with your own factory while doing better than them and getting in their way. So everything, a lot of it sounded like it should appeal to me, but that type of required perfection on a spatial puzzle is just I want my spatial puzzles to be a little more free and a little less restrictive and just frustrating. So
and I'll say that I know I like this more than you, but I wouldn't even go so far as to say that it's I haven't wanted to play it since it's been here or whatever. It's not a game I've wanted to get to the table. I think that the toughest thing is that not only are you placing tiles in the grid, you can place tiles on top of each other, right? And so that it would be one thing to be how do I maneuver my board to place the pipes in the right way to funnel things? But then you can also put pipes on top of pipes to cover up old ones and make new connections. And so every tile can always go on pretty much every spot on the board, even as you fill it up. So that makes it so that there's it's just very prone to analysis paralysis. And not just that, I also think that the optimal way to probably experience Curious Cargo is to play it lots, and on each one purposely not get hung up saying like, okay, what's the best move? Just play and just learn through trial and error, because then the games go through the proper 30 to 60 minutes.
Yeah.
But then you have to be willing to play like lots of games of Curious Cargo.
Yeah.
And like, so if you're...
And I think with the same person.
Exactly.
You do not want to play this with someone who hasn't played it before
Yeah.
if you've played a bunch.
So I think like if you like this style of game, if you like a lot of what it's doing, and you're willing to just like play it a whole bunch, and then for those first, like I would say like 4 or 5 plays, not really focus almost at all on like, am I making the most optimal decision, or was there a better play? Just accept that
Pull some levers and see what happens.
Yeah, like it's almost like accepting that you're going to make bad plays, because hopefully every game you play, you make better and better plays, and you make less of these mistakes as you're learning like, oh, actually, I remember this piece, or I remember that if I want to connect to this spot, it's an efficient way to do this, and then change it to this spot later. Like you start to like learn some of those, but I never even learned that from the games I played. So like you have to really be committed to Curious Cargo.
Yeah, and I was going to say, for me, it's a hard sell to do that level of like letting go. Like, it would almost be like if in Castles of Burgundy you were taking tiles into your possession and then just throwing them away without placing them. Like, it's like, well, then why are we taking turns if I'm not actually progressing in the game? If I'm just taking things and then not using them. But like, I hear you. I think, yeah, anyways, it's a game that has broken my brain, has frustrated me, and has actually made me not want to play Pipeline anymore. But I know there's a lot of people who are going to love this game, and again, it's a really impressive design. I don't know how this was put together and how it all works. It does.
And remember, you like Lisboa and you don't like Mercado de Lisboa, so maybe it'll be the same thing. You'll like Pipeline, but you won't like Curious Cargo.
It could be, yeah, it could be, honestly. So
who knows?
We'll see. But
yeah, I understand.
If you like these kind of games, if you really like that really intense, brain-burning spatial puzzle type stuff where perfection is like paramount to the game, you might want to check out Curious Cargo, but it's not for me.
Cool. All right. Time to not only disappoint you, but I'm pretty sure this is going to be the one that I'm going to get the most dislikes, ever thumbs down on a video, and probably comments being like, how did you possibly put this on here? I will say, again, I will stress, I am open to being wrong about this, but I just think that this is going to be a bit of a mismatch for me personally, but I completely understand why people like this game. My pick is Le Havre.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I will say this is another one, even way more so than the Estates, that I went into with really high expectations. One, because Uwe games and how well they land for me and us, how much I love them, and Feast Road being my favorite game of all time, and just everything I've heard about Le Havre, and just I was expecting to love it in the same way I love or enjoy most Uwe games. I know what it is about Le Havre that I don't like, and I think this is 100% just my personal preference, is that I felt like...
Hey, why don't you give them a brief overview of what you do in Le Havre first?
Sure. So Le Havre is a classic, or not, yeah, I guess classic Uwe big box, like, you know, I guess is it a worker placement?
It's debated whether it's worker placement, because you only have one single worker and they can stay in the same spot, but I think it's an economic game that has aspects of worker placement, I would say.
Exactly. So you have this like river, or like stream of water, whatever it's called in the game, that is going to have different resources. I think every round they're randomly placed in different spots of what you're going to acquire.
At the start of the game, you determine what order they're going to come out in, and then as throughout the game, they're populating at the same kind of space. They're accumulating action spaces similar to Agricola, but there's an order that they happen in every round.
Yeah, and you're going to be I'm going to probably do this a disservice of explaining. I mean, you're going to have to jump in, but like essentially,
I've played it more recently than you and more times. So I feel bad. I'm just you explain it.
It's all good. Essentially, you're collecting all different types of resources, a ton of different resources in the game. You're also having access to all these different special buildings and I guess non-special buildings.
Yeah, but some of them belong to the town and some of them belong to the players, right?
Yes, exactly. And at its heart, what you're doing is finding the most efficient way to gather and convert these resources to maximize the amount of points that you're getting, utilizing the buildings, utilizing which spots you're going to with your workers and what you're choosing to do with them. So there's a lot of decision making, and like that's a really, really like vague, quick overview. But it is the aspect of it that I feel like when I played it, it just felt like I was playing a really long resource conversion game. And maybe that, like with the way like it's an economic game and it does involve resources a lot, I'm more forgiving of that, and I think I would even go so far as to say I enjoy that type of resource conversion game when it's a short game. And I'll use Furnace as an example again, just because that is one of the quicker, resource conversion games I can think of off the top of my head, where that game plays in like, on the box, I think it says like 30 to 40 minutes. I'm sure you can go upwards of an hour, where a lot of what you're doing is what resources am I going to collect? How am I going to collect them in order to convert to points? Whoever has the most points wins. I know that's probably me boiling Le Havre down, like, and just taking all the stuff out and just saying this is what it is, but it just felt like, I mean, our game took like 3 hours, I would say, or close to 2.5, something like that.
Yeah, with rule. It was our first time playing, both of us, but yeah.
But it just felt like at some point I realized that all I was really doing by the end of it was, or like ultimately was just, how do I convert these resources to points? And yeah, a lot of games I love have that, but for some reason that just felt like the bulk of what I was doing in Le Havre, and I didn't like it in that long of a game. I felt like I wanted more variety and I wanted more going on. And the thing I was most excited about going in, and even as I was playing, and I think it's almost one of the things I like and dislike, is the buildings. I think that the buildings are such a cool mechanic, but at the same time, when we played, so many of the special buildings, I would say, didn't feel special. Like, and maybe it's just like, it just felt like there were so many buildings that like we didn't use and didn't have a purpose, or we did use and I'm like, or I got and I'm like, actually I'm just gonna sell this. Like, I don't really have it. Like, it felt like for something like special buildings, again, maybe it's playing at 2 players, I don't know. But it just felt like I was expecting more out of the special buildings than I actually got. And so I think it was a combination of the thing I was most excited about, feeling a little bit not lackluster, but a little bit let down by it. And then the fact that like that long of a resource conversion style game just isn't something that's going to land with me personally, compared to, you know, I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's another Uwe game that is that heavy on resource conversion. Like I didn't feel that way about Agricola. I didn't feel that way about Feast for Odin, obviously.
No, honestly, I think his heaviest resource conversion game, I think, is Oret Labora, which we haven't played yet.
Played that one yet.
So when we get to that one, maybe.
Yeah.
I think that's his heaviest one.
Yeah. But. So I think that's why I know people love this game, and it's obviously like this is not a new game. But for me, I just realized that if a game's going to rely that heavily on just how like efficiently can you gather and then convert resources to points, if it's going to be that long, I'm probably not going to have a great time. I think for me, I'd rather a game like that be maxing out at like hour and a half, hour 45. Like, I think that's probably like my top end for me being able to stomach that kind of like being the main crux of what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. So one thing I want to say about the buildings real quick before I forget is that I think they should have called them unique buildings rather than special, because sometimes the ability on them isn't particularly exciting. It doesn't feel like it's special because you're like, oh, well, that just like allows me to convert a resource into something or go here and get a lot of this resource. I think they're more unique because they allow you to either get a large quantity of something or combine or combo with something else that allows you to basically do something that wouldn't have been possible otherwise in the game. So it might not be an exciting play, but it's like, if I have a pile of this one resource, that might be the one building that allows me to convert it efficiently into this other one resource or whatever. Yeah. But what I wanted to ask you was, if it was like, is it mostly because of the length, and compared to the other games we've talked about in this video, would you give this one more like leeway, or more like, would you be more open to trying this one again because of how long it is and because of how many of the cards we haven't seen and because how much there is still to discuss? Like, I guess think, like playing Targi already is like, feels like we've seen a lot of what there is to see. Le Havre feels like, I've played it twice and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of that game.
Like, I would want to play it again. I would almost want to play the short version of it. I know there's like 2 versions, just to like see if that helps at all. For me, it's just like there's tons to set up. There's tons of rules I have to remember. Like, it is a pretty involved game, like most Uwe games. Like, that's not a criticism.
I thought the rules were relatively. I found the most decisions came from the building.
I guess like not the rules. Sorry, like it's almost the same thing as like Feast for Odin. The Feast for Odin rules are simple. It's how many action spaces there are. And looking at that, for me, it was having to like look at all the buildings that are available, or look at how I'm going to convert resources and think like, okay, how am I going to do this? Like, that amount of thinking about resource generation specifically, I was interested and really into the game for, like, I would say like the first half. And by the end, even when we were against those last few turns that should have felt exciting, kind of were, about like, how do I, like, on these last few turns do everything I want to do, and I can't do everything, which is usually a feeling I love. I just felt like it was mostly just coming down to me mathing out like, yeah, I can convert these fish and I'll do it this way, and that's 18 and I do it this way, and that's 17. Okay, this makes more sense. And I was like, honestly, I'm starting to not care if I even make the most efficient play at the end, because it was just like, I don't know. I just found that
you don't know. And also, if you were going to win by 50 or 60, does the difference of 5 or 6 points here matter? You don't know if this. So yeah, I have to agree with you on that. The end of the game to me was the least interesting part both times I've played, And because there's so much that's up in the air during the game for the first at least 2/3 or 3/4, in my opinion, in terms of what you can do or having to pivot. And then when you know, because you can see how many turns you have left at the end of the game. And sometimes you look and you see, okay, I have 2 turns, I have 3 turns, and you know you have to go to that shipping line spot to ship all those goods. So the end is very much a, how can I get rid of all these goods and convert all this stuff into points so I'm not left over with a bunch of stuff that I didn't use? So it definitely feels a bit mathy at the end, especially because in those, I think we each probably got at least a third, maybe half of our points in the final 3-4 turns, because you're just like piles of goods and trying to think, do I buy another ship real quick to ship more goods? So it is very mathy at the end, and I also don't really love that part of it. Yeah. But one thing I'm gonna put this to you this way. I think Feast for Odin is just as much of a resource conversion game as Le Havre. I think Uwe has just been clever about the way he sort of the way he hides it. Because the ultimate resource in a Feast for Odin is tiles, polyomino tiles that you use to cover your board. Because without those, you pretty much can't win the game. Like your starting board, you start with a -81, I think. And if you're playing against good players, I don't think it's possible to win without also taking one of those islands or maybe a bunch of the sheds or something. But you can't win with just a starting board and cards or whatever. You can't. So in order to take your starting board that has -81 spots plus some other boards, you have the whole game is taking tiles. So you're either taking wood to then convert some of the spots, just convert resources to red tiles or orange tiles, or then you're converting it to a ship, which then you use your ship and go to a spot with 2 workers, and that is being converted into gaining goods that go, or then you're upgrading your goods to better goods, or then so to me, I think Feast for Odin it's obviously they're not all wood stone. It's not a pile of resources, and you don't collect them all the same way. But so many of the spaces have an arrow saying turn this into this, turn this into this, and to me, the whole game is about how do I ramp up this engine so that I can gain as many of these tiles? How do I convert as many things to as many tiles to cover as much space?
I won't do and this is mostly for my benefit because I talk about Feast for Odin in every video. But I think in general, tons of board games that I enjoy and love and that we play, it could be boiled down to being technically a lot of what we're doing to get our points anyways is resource conversion. I know that, but I think that I guess maybe it is what I don't like about Le Havre is that it's it doesn't try to really pretend to be anything else, or it doesn't really find an interesting way to bake some other elements in, whether it's rolling dice to go, now I am doing Feast for Odin comparison, rolling dice to go pillaging, or whether it's, do I get a shed or do I get this and how to utilize it? Maybe it's that I need more paint on it to kind of hide what is going on at its core, whereas I felt Le Havre didn't pull any punches of basically just saying whoever can most efficiently convert the resources will get the most points. For sure. And to me, I just I felt disengaged by that, I guess. And
that's fair.
And at the length, the thing is, I would love to go back and explore more, but the idea of being okay, but if it's going to be another 3-hour experience, I could play 2 games I love, and that's.
I don't think it'd be 3 hours, but I hear you. And even for me, if it's going to consistently take 2.5 to 3 hours, then over time, I think it's a game I'm going to kind of cool on a little bit too. But if I can get it to be quicker. Anyways, I think the economic aspect of, I think when the game you and I played, we didn't take any loans. I played it a second time, and I tried taking a loan to basically, I'm having to use money throughout the rounds to pay off the loan, but it allowed me to get a better building early on, and I sold, I think 14 buildings throughout the game. So I played it very differently the second time, and it made me want to play the game even more, knowing wow, that felt way different than the first play based on just the economy stuff that was happening throughout. So. Anyways, I feel like we've talked plenty about Le Havre here, and
I'll get lots of flack for it. And it's fine. I expected it.
We'll probably cover it at some point on the channel in some type of review in the future, anyways. But okay, Le Havre.
All right.
Damn. Le Havre and the Estates. I
know.
I didn't come over expecting this. Damn. And these are new games that I was super excited to try recently. I'm okay, well, I guess I gotta pick some other people to play these with. No. I appreciate your honesty, and I appreciate you highlighting the good things as well about these games. Okay, so the last game I've got here is one I've only played on BGA. I can't remember if I've played it once or twice. I think it's twice, but I guess you guys can check my BGA account to verify. This is Space Base. So this is what is it actually? 2 to 6 or 3 to 6 players, I think. I think it goes up to 6.
I think so too.
Very dice-based game. I haven't actually played Machi Koro, but I've always heard it compared to Machi Koro. A lot of people say it's a better version of Machi Koro. But it's most of the game, if not all of it, is done through simultaneous play, where basically at the start of the round, one player will roll dice, and those values that are rolled are going to basically every player at the table, based on which bases they have, I guess, or Are they ships? No, they are bases, of course. Or no, it's your space base, but you're acquiring ships at your base. I can't even remember what. Are they bases or are they cards? I can't remember. It's been a while now since I played it. But
Yeah.
so each of the ones that you acquire on your board is going to have a number that corresponds to one of the values from the dice, like 2 through 12 on the dice, basically. And you're getting these things and putting them on your board. And then when someone rolls the dice, you check, do I collect based on the cards if I have them in that spot? So there's this thing going around the table where you're always engaged, like there's something happening all the time and it's not your turn, and you get an influx of, you can either get points or basically the currency. So points obviously are just kept as points to the end, and your currency you can use to, again, buy more ships or bases or whatever and acquire them. So the main player interaction from the game comes in obviously getting benefits off of the other player's dice rolls, as well as the cards that you're buying from the center of the table are available to everyone. So when I heard about this game, and I remember thinking, like, I've spoken about this on the channel before. If you haven't seen it, like, I'm not a huge fan of dice-based games. We did a video on this before. I thought I was gonna like space-based a bit more because of the simultaneous play that I love so much in games like Race for the Galaxy. And I like games where there's like a market of things to look at, and you're trying to decide how much money and what's the value, is this gonna come through, whatever, that kind of thing. But there's a few things that kind of just ruin the experience for me. The first, and I'm going to say the main one probably, is a similar issue I had with Quacks of Quedlinburg when we talked about it in our We Disagree on Quacks of Quedlinburg video, which is that you can buy, there are plenty of things that you might buy during the game that might never come into play at all. Because if the values of those dice don't get rolled, you're just not going to get the rewards. So, and there's a decent amount of text on a lot of these cards. Like some of them, you look at a value 2 card and you're like, okay, and you read and there's a couple sentences worth, and you decide and you compare it with these other ones and you spend it whatever time and you're like, okay, I'm going to get that. And then, 10, 15 minutes later, the game ends and no 2 is rolled. And the time you spent making that decision of which one am I getting is completely irrelevant. You don't even get to use the card. I don't like that. I wish, it's not that I don't like randomness in games, it's just that I don't like decisions that can sometimes feel entirely trivial when you look back and say, well, that decision I made was a waste of time because it didn't factor in at all. So if the game had something where, let's say you roll the dice and maybe on your turn you get a benefit, maybe on the active player's turn, they also get to like spend a certain amount of money to trigger one. So maybe you start at the middle value, like maybe if you're 7, you want to trigger your 7, it's free, but maybe the 6 and the 8 cost 1 gold, and then the 5 and the 9 cost 2, or whatever. And maybe you do this, we're increasing cost so that like, if I bought that 2 or 3, I can acknowledge, yes, it's unlikely, I'm probably not going to roll it, but if it's really important to me, I can use my gold to make sure that I get to use that.
Yeah.
Even if it just is once, there might still have been bad luck. I might have still thought, hey, odds are I should have rolled that 3 or 4 times, but at least I can be upset with myself for saying I didn't have a contingency plan. I didn't get the money that I needed to ensure that I was going to trigger that, rather than just saying, I got unlucky and that card I bought didn't even come into play at all.
Yeah.
The other thing is that the game is like, even just on BGA, it is like a hot mess on the table. There's so many things everywhere. It's like every player has up to 12 or I guess 11, because 2 through 12 slots on their board. Then you've got this kind of like piles and piles of cards in front of you. There's just like blocks of text and icons everywhere. Like, it just feels like a game that is, I think people that have like a short attention span or who feel like they get like check out when it's not their turn or that kind of thing, I think the game is going to go well with a lot of people like that, because if you want to feel involved or a sense of progression, you're always getting things. People rolling dice, you're getting something here, then you're spending it to buy new things, to then get more. There's this ramp up sense that goes on throughout the game, but I just feel like because everything's happening simultaneous, I don't really have time to like look at what other players are doing and be like, okay, well, these players have these cards that are good with 6s, so I should probably also get cards that are 6s because maybe, like, yeah. I can't really pay attention to what's going on when it's all simultaneous, and there's just so much that I just felt like I just kind of bounced off of it.
Yeah, and I haven't played Space Base, but I played like 4 or 5 games of Machikoro, which now that I'm thinking about it, that might be one of the games that neither of us owns that I played the most of for some reason. It's been a long time now since I played it, but and it's all been at like board game cafes. Okay. But Machikoro is one that I enjoyed, but I think it definitely is one of those games where you go, if you're going to go in and get the most maximum enjoyment out of a game like Machikoro or Space Base, or even you could probably lump in Quacks of Quedlinburg here, you kind of have to like be in the right mood for it, and like, and it depends who you're playing with, and you have to really be like not looking for an experience where the best decisions you make are going to influence whether or not you win. Like, you're kind of just making decisions, and like, yeah, I might get unlucky, I might, you're right, like you can, in Machikoro, you can buy certain buildings, and if the die never rolls that way, you're like, man, like, why isn't it, like, why am I not getting my rolls? You have to like I'm not always wanting to play a game like that, but I think I definitely have more tolerance than you. I know that when it comes to those type of games, where if like say I was dating someone who like loved playing that game, I could go back and play it and find like, hey, that was fun, or like, oh, like I got really lucky at that game or whatever, and be okay with it. But I probably even myself would wear thin after all, where I'm like, okay, I've just had 3 games of Space Base in a row, and it feels like every decision I make didn't matter because the die didn't go in my favor or whatever, right? So I totally get it. I think this, like Quacks of Quedlinburg, I think we saw in the comments of that video and just people weighing in, it was very divisive. Like there was lots of people who were like, oh, this was super fun game, I play with my kids, I love it or whatever. And there's some people being like, yeah, I think I agree with Carlo, like don't like it for these reasons. So like, I think it just falls in that category of like, it's not gonna be for everyone, and sometimes won't even be for you at different points, depending on how you're feeling and what kind of game you're looking for.
And I could see, similar to Quacks, I could see it being a great family game, especially to balance out skill levels between like parents and kids kind of thing, and everyone's involved and engaged. But it also, I think, ultimately it boiled down to feeling almost like a shopping game too, where it's like you shop and then you wait and see if your purchase is paid off. And then now you have enough money, okay, you shop and buy a thing, and then you kind of roll some dice, wait to see if you collect on other players' turns, and then you do some shopping, and then it just kind of loops like that until someone has the most points and wins. So I don't know. This is one, again, I'm open to trying again. I don't know if this is one that some people would say maybe I might enjoy more in person. Some people say that BGA has a great implementation. So if you're a fan of Space Base, maybe let me know in the comments below. This is one I would consider trying again. But so far, I just really didn't enjoy my time with it.
I think it's fair. And I think that's it. That's all 5 games. And you know what? I think that now that I haven't seen the full list, I think this really does fit the theme of the video of like, we don't like them, but I can see for every single one, obviously I knew the ones I picked, why people do like them, why you might like them, even though we're giving our opinion here. I mean, obviously any game can land with anyone or not land with someone. Like the great thing about loving like a hobby or whatever. But I just like, these more than any of them, I can recognize as I'm saying why I don't like something. I know why you do like this, or why Braden likes it, or why someone else who plays this, why they're gonna be like, oh my God, I love this. I'm gonna be like, yeah, I know that's awesome. It's just like, it's just not something for me, or it's just not something for you, or whatever.
Yeah, right? But they're all well-designed games that like, if they sound even mildly interesting to you, you should at least give them each a shot.
Yeah, and then tell us in the comments what your discovery was. If you agree with us after playing those games, or if you're like, yep, you were 100% wrong. I'm in the camp of one of the ones who likes it. We're always curious to hear those and have like little discussions in the comments. So
and let us know which ones you guys have. If there's games that weren't covered in this video, what are games that you find that you really don't like, but you totally understand why other people do, or games that you really respect, just don't want to play yourself? Let us know.
And other than that, thanks so much for watching, and we will see you next time.